Hello and welcome to the World Building Institute. I am Matthew. Happy belated New Year to you all. Sorry I didn't get much out in December. I wrote a really long script and had a massive crisis of faith in it at the last minute. I wrote this video to ease myself back into writing and stuff after taking most of December off, so I'm sorry that I didn't get much out. This is a more D&D oriented video where I run over 5 character builds and concepts that I've made but haven't had the chance to play yet and probably never will. I lay out the build and then a backstory for a character of that build. With that out of the way, let's dive right in. Number 1, the Lone Swordsman. So, the Lone Swordsman is a dueling specialist, by far the best one-on-one combatant on this list. We're going to run through all of these builds in the same order, so we'll start with Race, which for the Lone Swordsman is mostly immaterial, but for my money, I'd lean towards Wood Elf. Partly for that extra 5-foot move speed, the +2 to Dex and +1 to Wisdom, which are the main stats for this build, and access to the Elven Accuracy feat, which is far and away one of the best feats in the game for characters like rogues that do massive bonus damage when they score a critical hit. Next up, we're going to talk about the classes that we'll need. You're going to take 14 to 15 levels of Swashbuckler Rogue and 6 to 5 levels of Kensei Monk. The deciding factor in that extra level should be whether your DM gives you a magical weapon or not. If you get one, you're not going to need level 6 Kensei. It might be quite nice to have, but you're not going to need it. If they don't, you're going to want that 6th level Kensei ability, which makes all of your weapon attacks magic for the purposes of overcoming weapon damage. Just gives you a nice way to keep your weapon damage up high. Now, in terms of feats, you're definitely going to need Mobile and either Slasher or Piercer. Mobile has a slightly redundant feature due to Rakish Audacity, that being the ability to hit an opponent and be immune to opportunity attacks from them for the rest of the round, allowing you to slip in and out of combat with ease. Piercer with a rapier will boost crit damage, and Slasher with the longsword will make the mobility boost you get from Mobile go that little bit further. Feats to consider but that aren't necessary for the functioning of the build are Fighting Initiate for the dueling fighting style if you're a rapier user. Martial Adept, one superiority die isn't much, but a well-placed riposte can be incredibly deadly, and can be super useful in situations where it's you or an enemy. Elven Accuracy for those better critical hit odds, and Tough for fighter hit dice instead of D8s. So the benefits of the build, let's lay them out. First up, Mobility. Your speed, if you're a Wood Elf, is 60 feet once you have all 6 monk levels. That is the same as a level 20 monk. With Cunning action, you can conserve ki, and if you dash as an action as well, you can move 180 feet in a round. Those backline casters do not stand a chance. With the immunity to difficult terrain from the mobile feat, you can take a running long jump on any surface, and enemies in muddy swamps, shallow water, and thickly wooded forests don't have any advantage. Your survivability goes through the roof as well. Without armor, your AC will be pretty high. As a Wood Elf, I can get it to about 16 at level 1, and if you attack with both a weapon and an unarmed strike on your turn, you gain another +2 to AC from Kensei level 3. You also have a variety of features, Deflect Missile and Uncanny Dodge, which will make the attacks that do hit you hit that little bit less, and Patient Defense, to impose disadvantage when you must. When you strike an enemy, they cannot take opportunity attacks against you, and with your move speed so high, enemies will be unlikely to keep up with you. Step out of cover, attack your enemies, then retreat behind your tankier allies in group combat, or dominate with high speed in one-on-one combat. Now there are some drawbacks with overlapping features. The build is slightly MAD, relying on Wisdom for monk features and Charisma for its rogue ones, with Dexterity for everything else, but I personally would advise focusing on Wiz over Charisma. This is mainly for the monk AC boost. I built an example Wood Elf and got it to 5 Dex, 4 Wisdom and 2 Charisma at level 20, but a couple of magic items would more than give you any kind of advantage that you need there. Onto our example character of this build. Our lone swordsman is Varys Silverwolf. Growing up in the shadow of a great monastery, Varys would climb onto the rooftops and watch the monks as they trained below. He was an orphan, but the monastery refused to take him in, sensing in him too strong a desire for renown and greatness. He had long heard stories of the legendary longsword Black Fang, once wielded by the kings of an old kingdom far to the east, said to rest in an ancient, ruined temple, and he came to believe that if he could possess Black Fang, he would not need the monks nor anyone else, for he would be a legend all his own. He left his village, travelling as a gladiator and swordsman for hire, taking tasks from nobles and criminals, princes and paupers, building a fierce reputation as a deadly and skilled warrior. By the time Varys reached that temple, far to the east, he knew he did not need the sword, for his legend was already written, but he took it regardless. With Black Fang by his side, Varys went from powerful to unstoppable. Build number 2, we have the Telekinesist. The Telekinesist is 20 levels of Psi-Fighter from Tasha's. It's the only non-multiclass in here. Race-wise, I'd lean into something like the High Elf for the imp bonus and the free cantrip, but this isn't necessary for the build. You want to take the unarmed fighting style. This turns your fists into versatile 1d6/d8 weapons, but we are not done yet. Next, there are 2 feats you'll want to take, Telekinesis and Crusher. Between these and the level 7 Psi-Fighter ability, Telekinetic Thrust, you'll be able to shove an opponent up to 20 feet per round, 5 feet of which does not allow a saving throw. It also gives you the Mage Hand cantrip, which is really good, and an ability which will allow you to move large objects up to 30 feet as an action, which could allow you to create cover, drop heavy things on people, or move allies away from danger. This build is great for controlling and manipulating the field. You can create cover, pull down enemy structures, throw enemies off cliffs, but the fun don't stop there. You have fighter level HP, some really nice defensive abilities to boost AC and reduce damage, which, coupled with your access to heavy armor, will make your survivability very high. And you may be in full plate, but that doesn't mean you can't be nimble. The Psionic Leap feature gives you a flight speed equal to twice your movement speed for 1 round, and since you can dash and use it in the same round, that gives you a speed of 120 feet per round, 180 if you use Action Surge to dash twice. Use this to maneuver yourself around the field at high speed. Scale tall buildings, around 17 stories tall, which in a fantasy setting there probably aren't that many buildings taller than that, or fly up and, I don't know, grapple a dragon to the ground. Move like the wind to provide flanking to your allies and defeat your enemies. Our telekinesist is Mia Talak, a human woman of around 41 years. Mia was raised in a small mining village far from any cities and civilization. When she was a teenager, the miners from her village broke through into a mind flayer colony, and the mind flayers attacked the town. Mia was subjected to a mind flayer tadpole, but the change never happened. She never became an illithid. She was certain they were going to kill her, but fortune was on her side, and the drow attacked the colony, and it was in all this turmoil that Mia was able to escape. She fled into the Underdark, where she discovered new psychic abilities. She wandered down there lost and alone for many months until she came upon a mad illithid. Absolutely fascinated by her experience and her drive to survive in this dark, foreboding environment, she was taken in by it. He trained her to defend his lair from other illithids, constantly coming to hunt down and kill this outcast from their colony. Now, at her master's whims, she stalks the Underdark, finding and slaying mind flayers wherever they can be found. Next up, we have the Berserker. The Berserker is an absolute tank. High HP, resistance, self-healing, and mid-range damage all lead the Berserker to be a truly terrifying adversary. Race is once again mostly irrelevant, but I think a half-orc or a dragonborn could be really cool. Half-orc for relentless endurance, just squeezing out that little bit more tank, and savage attack for that extra critical hit damage, and dragonborn for the breath weapon, which you can use while wild shape. That's right, the Berserker is my take on the ever-popular Moon Druid Totem Barbarian combo. Now, most versions of this build that I've seen recommend Moon Druid 17, Barbarian 3, which I can totally see as a combination, but I wanted to do something that a little bit more combat oriented. So what we're going to do is take 14 levels of Totem Barbarian and 6 levels of Moon Druid. In terms of feats, I would recommend Tough, for even more tank in your human form, and maybe Charger, partly for the theming, but also the attack roll bonus. But this build doesn't particularly rely on feats, so do as you will. On to the benefits of the build. So Totem Barbarian has a lot of options, but there is only really one that matters here. Level 3 Bear. This changes your rage so you gain resistance to all damage bar psychic damage, which is an incredibly powerful buff. I'd recommend Bear or Eagle at level 6 and any of the level 14 ones, they're all pretty good. Now, this takes your wild shape Cave Bear from 42 HP to 84 HP in effect, unless you're fighting an Illithid or an Abellath or some other creature that does psychic damage, but those are few and far between. But I think we can make it even tankier, which is where your Druid levels come in. Because Rage stops you using spells. You may be wondering why we took 6 levels of Druid when 2 would have got us Wild Shape. We don't need spells, but we do need spell slots to power our self-healing. The Moon Druid ability Combat Wild Shape gives you a bonus action which expends a spell slot to heal 1d8 times slot level HP while Wild Shaped, meaning at 6th level Druid you have 19d8 self-healing to boost your Wild Shape HP. There's another 86 HP which you can dish out as bonus actions, which you hardly use while Wild Shaped, giving you a total Wild Shape HP across both of your uses of Wild Shape of about 244 health. Combine this with non-Wild Shape HP with a +5 con modifier and the Tough feat, and taking into account that Bear Totem resistance, effectively doubling your HP, around 378 Barbarian health and 138 Druid health, for a massive total of 760 effective hit points. That's around 1.5 Ancient Red Dragons. Now, Rage only lasts 1 minute, and you can only do it 5 times a day with this build, so you only get 5 minutes of your health at this absurd number, so be sure to use it when it counts. Not that you're a pushover the rest of the time, but still. In addition to this, you get your rage damage bonus from your wild shape attacks, which count as magical for overcoming damage resistance, and for some wild shape forms, including the Cave Bear, you can buff its AC using unarmored defense. You'll also get extra move speed from some of your barbarian features, and abilities like Feral Instinct also carrying over, giving you a nice boost to initiative. Our Berserker is Grobash Iron Bear, a half-orc woman who leads a band of mountain bandits. She was raised among the orcish people of Clan Iron Bear, far in the north. Their clan was involved in a bloody war against a human kingdom to the south, and while they were far from winning, they had managed to avoid the humans' main armies, launching skirmishes and raids while constantly on the move. Grobash's mother, the tribe's Archpriestess, inducted her into their druidic order, but her desire for battle and glory drove her to petition the chief for her own warband, which he granted due to her skill at arms. She led skirmish after skirmish against the humans, combining her great martial skill with her ability to change into wild animals to shock and frighten her opponents. But while her skill in battle was great, her lack of consideration in cleaning up the aftermath of her skirmishes would lead to the army finding her people and putting the village to the sword. Surviving the battle with a handful of her men, she took a blood oath to avenge her people and has raided human supply lines ever since in the form of a great grey bear, a reminder of the crimes committed against her people and of the doom that comes for theirs. Next up, we have the Agent, the ultimate social infiltrator. Don't expect to get any spells beyond the 6th level with this build, but don't worry, you're not going to need them. First up, race. I would lean heavily toward the Changeling for the shapeshifting and charisma boost, but any charisma race that blends into the setting of the world would work pretty well. Feats you're going to need are Actor for impersonating NPCs and Observant for reading lips when near targets. Feats to consider are Metamagic Adept for a little bit more metamagic, Poisoner, if you will be able to use poison in your campaign, and Skill Expert for an extra expertise and proficiency. Class levels, you'll want to take 12 levels of Eloquence Bard and 8 levels of Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. On to the perks of the build. First up, the Silver Tongue Bard feature. Plus your absurdly high charisma and expertise should mean that at Bard level 3, the lowest you can roll is a 17 on persuasion or deception checks, which is pretty damn good, up to a lowest possible roll at level 20 of 27. Next, you have Unsettling Words, a bonus action that makes an opponent lose points on their next saving throw based on a Bardic Inspiration dice. So far, so boring. But wait, what are those Aberrant Mind Sorcerer levels for? Could it be for Psionic Sorcery and Subtle Spell? Why yes it could. You see, by combining Subtle Spell and Psionic Sorcery, a slightly costlier version of the same ability unique to the Aberrant Mind, you can cast social spells like Charm Person or Suggestion in crowded spaces without alerting anyone, which is pretty tasty in itself, but when combined with Unsettling Words, allows you to cast spells that your opponent then gets a negative on the saving throw for, without anyone being any the wiser, which is an amazing combination. The Aberrant Mind features also offer you protection against the Charmed condition, reducing the odds of you being mind controlled by your enemies, and allows you to telepathically communicate with allies at great distances, as long as you keep the mission on a relatively tight schedule. Back to the Eloquence Bard. Features like Unfailing Inspiration will help conserve inspiration for those unsettling words, and Universal Speech will allow you to communicate with almost anyone. Go anywhere, impersonate anyone, learn anything. All the world and all its inhabitants are your weapons. Now this build does have some drawbacks. You won't get access to spells above 6th level, but truth be told, you're not going to need them. Use those 9th level spell slots to cast Mass Suggestion and turn a kingdom's top nobles in your enemy's direction for a year and a day before disappearing, never to be seen again. Our agent is the Faceless Man. No one knows his real name. He does not have one past. He has 1,000. He'll take any job for the right price, but those who work with him always suspect he has a hidden agenda, a motive that they can't quite place. He could be anyone. A barmaid in a tavern serving drinks to local soldiers. A visiting foreign dignitary from a land no one has ever quite heard of. A servant cleaning the king's chambers, or perhaps even upon the throne himself. Wars have been started and stopped by his hand, and those who cross him often end up dead by the hands of the mighty and the noble rather than his own. The Faceless Man does not have a name. Names are for friends, not puppets. And next we have the final build on this list, the Master of Fate. But first, a small disclaimer. If any of my players think it would be clever to come to my table with this build, I will tear their character sheets into tiny little pieces and throw them from the window of this apartment. Put simply, I wouldn't recommend playing this unless you really, really hate your DM. First up, race. Lightfoot Halfling, at least that would be my pick. You're going to be foregoing most of your physical stats for this build, and you'll want to focus on Charisma or Int for your combat spells. So this one provides the Int bonus, boosts to hiding, which will probably be quite helpful, since your AC isn't likely to be that high, and a little bit of dex to get your AC just off the ground. That being said, any halfling will do. The most important thing is that you benefit from the halfling's lucky feature, then all should be well. Class-wise, and this is where it begins to get a little bit complicated, you're going to need 6 levels of Star Druid, 6 to 8 levels of Divination Wizard, 6 to 8 levels of Wild Magic Sorcerer. Alternatively, you can go 6 in both Wizard and Sorcerer, and take 2 levels of Warlock in order to get the Pact of the Talisman feature, which will add to this class in a really great way. I realised that literally as I was recording, so it won't be included in the rest of the thing, but I thought it was worth pointing out. Now obviously, Druid, Wizard and Sorcerer, that's MAD as hell, but I recommend focusing on healing with your Druid spells, so you won't need to invest in Wisdom, support with your Wizard spells to lessen your investment in Intelligence, and combat with your Sorcerer ones, so Charisma should be your primary stat. Feat wise, you're going to want to focus on the Lucky and Bountiful Luck feats. On to the benefits of the class. So the first 3 levels should be Wizard 2, Sorcerer 1. this gives you 2 portents and access to Tides of Chaos, which is really good, particularly if your DM is like me and is quite trigger happy on Wild Magic Surge. So there's already quite a Mastery of Fate available to you at the 3rd level. As the build advances, you will gain the Lucky and Bountiful Luck added to the mix. Bountiful Luck lets you protect your allies from natural ones, and Lucky lets you force rerolls and make rerolls, which you can use your portents on if need be. All in all, Bountiful Luck gives you 1 conditional reroll per round, and Lucky gives you another 3 a day, which when combined with Tides of Chaos gives you a minimum of 4, potentially many more depending on your DM's Wild Magic Surge, and the 2 portents. Next we add the 6 levels of Star Druid and push all the way up to level 6 to 8 for the other 2. This gives you a number of boons, from Wizard, an ability that lets you copy divination spells better, and reclaim spell slots when you use divination spells, which is pretty good. There appears to be some dispute as to whether a wizard can copy and prepare spells as a multi-class that they would not be able to as a single class wizard. I leave that up to DMs. From Sorcerer you get the Bend Luck ability, which should give you either 3 or 4 d4s, depending on your Sorcerer levels, to affect people's rolls as a reaction. This can give you them a bonus or be removed from the roll as you need to. And from the Star Druid, some special forms with Wild Shape, Guidance as a cantrip, and the Guiding Bolt spell for free a number of times a day equal to your proficiency bonus. But for us, the most important thing from the Star Druid is Cosmic Omen, which gives you 2d6 per proficiency bonus that you can either use to increase or reduce a roll by a d6. Now this is set at the beginning of the day, otherwise it would just be a better version of Bend Luck, but it does free up some of the stuff you would spend on Bend Luck for meta magic. You'll also get some nice survivability boosting features from the Druid, like the Chalice form or Wild Shape in general, which is by far the best survivability buff in the game. Overall, by level 20 you should have 4 unconditional rerolls a day minimum, depending on wild magic, 4d4s and 12d6s to affect rolls. In addition to that, you'll have Guidance and Guiding Bolt, which should help give your allies advantage when they really need it. What was that? Your DM wants to make a roll? You tell them no, I'll make that roll. Oh, you don't like the outcome? Oh, okay, that's fine, I'll add a d6 to it. You're the DM now. You take the DM's stupid dice and throw them in their gormless faces while they scream in horror at what you've done to their campaign. I should not have put this build out there. I apologise to any DMs who have to deal with the consequences of this in the future. Our Master of Fate is a halfling known as Perton var Perdak. Perton is a travelling fortune teller. He moves from place to place reading people's fortunes and fleecing them for money. Unlike a lot of people in his position, however, Perton has managed to achieve a great deal of fame, as every fortune he predicts comes true. On more than one occasion, people have tried to kill him to learn the secrets of his craft, but Perton is so incredibly lucky and so incredibly foresight that all of these attempts fail, not due to Perton's particular skill in combat, but just due to sheer terrible luck. People botch assassinations so badly that they kill their own men trying to hurt this travelling fortune teller. He's a very, very lucky man, most hated by noblemen and gods alike. Hated by the gods, I hear you say. Why is that? Well, you see, the secret of Perton's power is not some random abstraction, but a very material secret hidden within him. When he was a small child, foolish as he was, he happened upon a particularly shiny rock and ate it. This rock was a time stone, one of the few pieces of the world that keep it safe and orderly against the forces of chaos. The gods want it back, assassins want it to sell it, kings and nobles want it to secure their realms, and in the middle of it all is just an incredibly lucky halfling walking around telling fortunes. That is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I'm just going to try and ease myself back into it. I am going to be dropping the number of videos I make back down to 2 a month. I watched the stuff I made last year and realised that my first 2 videos are probably my favourite, just because they're higher quality and stuff. So I'm going to be slowing it down a little bit in the new year. I hope that you've enjoyed yourselves today, and I hope to see you again. You've been watching the World Building Institute. I've been Matthew. Goodbye.